the product planning, the business plan. Uh, I think that's my suggestion. How what would be the safer way of starting a business?
That's very right. Have you also come up with there these days there are a lot of programs by the government, state government and central government programs where people having certain ideas, startups is a buzzword, and there may be thousands of startups going on India on different sectors and different areas, and the government has also invested public resources into that. But what I have, seen few examples is the coaching or the taking in it is mostly an academic exercise. There is a there is no focus on taking an expert, hands-on experience, people like you or with a similar experience. What is your take on that?
No, you're absolutely right. Especially this is more relevant to easy funding, which comes from the government.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, easy from the point of view that the
it's
challenge
public
is
money.
only
It's public money.
it is public money. The only challenge is to establish a connection and being able to get that money out. After
Hmm.
that, the government or that agency which gives the money, they forget about it. And
Hmm.
then the person or the entrepreneur who has taken the money, then he does whatever he wants.
Hmm.
Now, compare this with a investment or a private equity fund. Now, private
Yes.
equity fund, if they give the money, then they will also put in place a process which monitors and also ensures that to the extent it is possible, they are able to keep a track of how the money is being sent and how the business is developing. So going back to the earlier one, which is what you spoke about as the government is concerned,
Hmm.
there traditionally, if you see the success rate of government funded such entrepreneurial programs, I guess is quite low, and that is primarily because uh, the entrepreneur is given the money and then the entrepreneur is, so to say, let loose.
Hmm.
Ideally, one model which the government could look at is that the government has a panel of business experts or mentors who have
Hmm.
volunteered or who have made themselves available either on payment basis or otherwise, that is immaterial, but they have made themselves available. And the government also has a mechanism of identifying, screening, and then finding, saying that yes, these guys are really worth becoming coaches or mentors or whatever you may say.
Hmm.
And when a loan is given by the government agency, a mentor or a coach or an expert is connected with that whoever has got that loan, and then the government operates and monitors that account through this expert. So the expert does two things: he is the watchdog as far as the money is concerned, but he is also an expert helping the entrepreneur to actually be able to execute the project. So uh, if this sort of an approach is adopted by the government, there is a higher probability of a success rate.
That's
This
right.
is what
That's right.
I personally feel.
One thing is there, if suppose a government body, publicly funded government body, who are, funding the startups or entrepreneurs in various scheme, various fields. Have you come across any situation where these bodies have engaged or empaneled venture capitalists who can then put in a certain amount of capital, and then it can be can you think that it will be a better situation to be tried?
Now that you have mentioned, I think
Hmm.
it's a wonderful thing which is close to a public-private partnership.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
means the government provides the platform of getting these entrepreneurs. Government also gets part funding through the private equity guys, but
Hmm.
through the private equity guys, they have they sort of create a mechanism to oversee how the program or project is running, both,
Hmm.
and providing the oversight as well as the expertise to that person who has taken the loan. I think that's a very good idea. It's a form of public private partnership. This is a model which should definitely be tried.
Certainly, and then as you have mentioned, and there are so many experienced people. I have seen it happening that mm, in whatever way, certain entrepreneurs were selected and they were given some kind of a funding, mm, and further they are left out to commercialize on their own.
Right.
I mean, there is no marketing help, there is no such platforms, there are no connection with the industry. And I mean, say, even the public sector, treat them as, try to exploit them. Large, I
Yeah.
don't want to name, large public sector, वो ये कहेंगे उसको कि आ जाओ भाई लगा दो सक्सेसफुल हो जाओ पेमेंट कर देंगे otherwise
Yeah.
till
So
then it is your baby, you have to prove it right.
yeah. So I think first of all, I think programs and projects should be selected
Hmm.
which have very little to do again with either government or with the PSU, because that's a different ball game. And an
Hmm.
entrepreneur to get that person involved in such a uh, ecosystem is very it is I don't think it is right. I
Hmm.
think by and large the projects which are funded by such institutions should be projects which are not dependent on government or government bodies. They should be, as far as possible, out there in the market and facing the market uh, on their own. However, there should also be a very proper project appraisal to
Hmm.
see that how much of what is the possibility of success, what is the merit in the business plan,
Hmm.
what is the success chances of success. That in-depth appraisal should be done before the loan is agreed and then disbursed. But once that is done, a private equity partner who does the part funding and also provides the oversight as well as the expertise to that entrepreneur, I think that's an excellent model which should be parallelly looked at.
Yeah, definitely it will provide so many inputs. And then I'm curious to know whether you have worked so wide and large into automobile manufacturing and marketing and all those areas. So, is there been any industry specific initiative like, Indian Automobile Manufacturers Association in a certain area? And then, sorry, it has to be definitely region specific, of Haryana, of Rajasthan, where the manufacturers outline a kind of, with, of course, with the intervention of maybe some part of the government initiative, because they can provide certain direction and resources, and also the venture capitalists, and then know that, okay, these are the components we now want, and this is the progression, how this will demand will grow. Then who are the people who can come in and do something about it? I mean, has it been tried?
Actually, if you see the automobile industry,
Mm.
that is one industry who has uh, directly, indirectly
Mm-hmm.
nurtured and promoted
Mm.
a large number of promoters. Actually, if you see, the most
Mm.
of the business growth in India has
Mm.
been from the automobile industry through the ancillaries. And if you see I mean, if you go, I'm talking about the time in 77, 78 when I started working. At
Mm.
that time, uh, ancillarization had just been started. The
Mm-hmm.
biggest challenge problem in India was
Mm.
production. And production, At that time, what used to happen? Most of the collaboration, most of the uh, automobile manufacturing, whether it was tractors, whether it was trucks or cars or scooters, they were largely done. Most of the manufacturing was done in house, and that
Mhm.
had its own limitation in terms of production. Hence,
Right.
everybody was feeling the need to do an ancillary development and offload production. So that led to creating of this entire ancillary network, which
Yes.
meant dedicated suppliers, which meant promoting suppliers, which meant um, different manufacturers tried different things. Say, for example, if we see Faridabad, that's where I started working. The
Mm.
entire new industrial township and what was later became Faridabad NIT. NIT stood
Mm.
for New Industrial Township. It was small ancillaries. They were all feeding, whether it is Escorts or Eicher there eh,
Mhm.
uh, in Faridabad. Next became the second phase when, say, for example, Eicher decided to set up its next plant in Parvanu, and
Mm.
Parvanu was a backward sort of underdeveloped area.
Yes, yes.
So along with the industry, there was an ancillary estate which was planned. And when Eicher set up the plant, Eicher also identified and in collaboration with Himachal government, we set up we selected a lot of engineers who wanted to become entrepreneurs, and we got that. And there was this dedicated, okay, you manufacture, we'll buy from you. So they set up their manufacture plant aligned to what products or what components, you know, in our case it was Eicher or any other company who wanted. So that was the second phase. Third
Mhm.
phase was when companies like Maruti came in. So
Mhm.
when Maruti came in, of course they started working with whatever existing units were there, but their technology requirements and the volume requirement were so large that
Mm.
they had perforce to bring in their component suppliers in Japan.
Correct.
So they invited their component suppliers in Japan to set up plants in India.
Mhm.
And that was the next phase of ancillarization which took place. So I think you are very right. And whatever was done by automobile industry was subsequently done by other industries in different shape and size. But this was the approach which was adopted and which is actually where how the Indian business grew and how the Indian economy grew, all through this downstream development of the supply chain.
Right, right.
More and more organizations did offloaded all non-critical or less critical activities outside, and they
Mm.
only concentrated on the most critical aspects, or where they wanted to have proprietary of the technology. Say, for example, engine or gearbox. All
Yes.
these things, they were very strategic.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
aggregates they wanted to keep in house. They
Mhm.
wanted to maintain their design and technology. So
Mhm.
uh, otherwise, all other items they just offloaded.
Right. Are you also aware of the? I mean, one thing sometimes I, wonder about. Then Noida, New Okhla Industrial Development Area, basically was to shift the congested industrial areas of Delhi, right?
Correct.
Eventually become Noida, which is now a thriving industrial and business center.
Correct.
Uh, so that went to Uttar Pradesh. And then next thing went to Haryana, Gurgaon or Faridabad,
Gurgaon.
and their proximity to Delhi for logistical region or so many other things is important. But where I live, my state, Rajasthan, they didn't, initiate any such activity. I wonder, they did not allow, these took advantage of their area, Bhiwadi, and very, near to. Of course, the Bhiwadi is an industrial area, but it is now in a big thriving, but not the kind of with the high technology, or which is using the entrepreneurial spirit and skills of the people. So, what could be the? This is a leadership failure basically. Whatever might have happened, leadership of the leaders, political leaders, as well as the bureaucrats.
Absolutely right.
Hmm.
And by chance,
Hmm.
I did mention that for about 3.5 years, I was heading a small business in Eicher, and
Hmm.
that business was based in Bhiwadi. And I'm
Hmm.
talking about Bhiwadi. I spent 3.5 years in Bhiwadi from the
Hmm.
year 1991 to 1994 late.
Hmm.
I spent about 3.5 years there.
Hmm.
So, and now uh, let me, uh, 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 I mean, first of all, your observation is absolutely right.
Hmm.
Rajasthan was not
Hmm.
uh, progressive enough to really develop uh, the nearby areas, nearby to Delhi areas, uh, as well as the other states could do. Of course, they had the disadvantage of they were not as near to Delhi as was say Gurgaon or Faridabad. They were far away,
Hmm.
but in 1991, I was staying in Gurgaon and I used to go to Bhiwadi every day. It
Hmm.
was a back-breaking experience. The roads were not there.
Yeah.
I mean, Madhav, you will not believe for 3 years I have traveled from Gurgaon to Bhiwadi and to reach that plant
Hmm.
for good about 2.5 kilometers. The vehicle through in which I used to go, it used to go through agricultural field. There was no road.
Hmm.
So, of course, there was this challenge of logistic disadvantage.
Hmm.
The leadership failure was that there was no connectivity. They did
Hmm.
not see. There was a mindset that why should we have a good connectivity with Gurgaon, because
Hmm.
Gurgaon is a Haryana. Why should we benefit Haryana? Without realizing the fact that Bhiwadi or there was no town in in Rajasthan which was developed enough to be able to attract talent there. Where would the person stay there?
Yes, of course.
So there was this leadership failure was in terms of not developing the right infrastructure, not giving the right connectivity, and and looking at things in a perspective rather than seeing why should we do it. I remember I made innumerable trips to Jaipur trying to
Hmm.
work with so many you know that particular unit we had. It was the industrial area. It was a Rico industrial area.
Yeah.
Bhiwadi
Yeah.
was originally with Rico. So
Rico. Yeah.
I don't know. For those 3 years, I must have made at least minimum 50 to 60 trips to Jaipur,
Hmm.
essentially to Rico and Rajasthan Financial Corporation (RFC).
RF,
These
RFC.
two
Yes.
they used to be in the same building.
Hmm.
And it was finally exasperating that we just couldn't get them to look at things that. And it's not only that. Before I came to Bhiwadi, in
Hmm.
Eicher for about a year and a half or 2 years, I was based in their Alwar plant. Alwar was again in Rajasthan. Alwar
Yes.
experience was still better.
Hmm.
I spent about 2 years in Alwar. I was staying in Alwar.
Hmm.
Alwar was still better because it was a self-contained. It was a reasonable city. People, I mean, it was a challenge in getting people to move to Alwar, but Alwar had some basic infrastructure. Bhiwadi had nothing. Bhiwadi was just a satellite town. Early morning, everybody used to come. In the evening, everybody used to go back. In the night, it would be a ghost town.
Yeah.
So that is a problem. And of course, I think because of this, essentially these two things, they were not able to attract the right type of industries. Of course, now you have Honda has set up a plant there.
Yeah.
There are a couple of more, but I think they never could really become an alternative to Gurgaon. They could actually have done it. They could have done a wonderful thing, but
That
you put it very rightly. It's a failure of leadership.
it's the failure of leadership and the kind of dynamism. The old style politics is keeping away from businessman, from industry. There is a shroud of socialism over most of the political leadership. So they don't think about these things, these practical solutions. They never provide. And
Yeah. See,
one more
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Please go
See,
ahead. Go ahead.
you have this Alwar experience. I know the Eicher Alwar, and there was Swaraj Mazda was also there, and Ashok Leland, right?
No, Ashok Leyland was there. Swaraj Mazda
Uh,
wasn't there. Ashok Leyland was
uh,
there,
Ashok
and Ashok
Leland.
Leyland was a very bad. They more or less closed down there. I don't know latest, but that plant wasn't doing well at all.
So, having worked in Alwar in the automobile industry, and and surely if they were proactive and had that mindset to get things going, improving infrastructure and all that, that Alwar could have become a town for maybe automobile hub in a sense, because one nucleus is there. What is your
Ac-
take on that?
Actually, if you see in Alwar, there was an industrial area which was known as MIA,
Matsya industrial area. Yes, yes.
Industrial Area.
Hmm.
It started off very well. That's where Eicher got a plant, where Ashok Leyland got a plant, and then there was this Avanti Gareli.
Avanti
Uh, uh,
Gavarili, yes.
a great plant was set there. There were a couple of good companies,
Hmm.
but again, it just didn't. And MIA finally became a dead industrial township. Most of the companies moved out of MIA. For
Hmm.
again, primarily infrastructure was one of the major reasons, and
Hmm.
even Eicher gave up the plant in MIA, and
Hmm.
they moved closer to the city, more closer to the town
Hmm.
in Alberta itself. So of course now that plant is sold off to Tafe. Tafe have taken over that tractor business, but
Hmm.
that entire they took up a road. That's an area which is known as Itarna Road. I
Eternal.
don't know whether so. Most of the industry in MIA they closed down.
Hmm.
Again, same leadership failure, industrial, the infrastructure, etc. Everything was just inappropriate. All the industries there they became sick and they closed down. Aisha survived because they moved from MIA to this Itarna Road.
Right, the person at the top, the Gujarat could, initiate,
Excellent.
proactively initiate, and they took a Maruti factory. They're having some problem in Manesar plant. They took the proactive step, and they took it to Gujarat. And
Yeah,
same,
Maruti is there, Tata is there, all of them. These guys are there.
all of them.
So of course, and now you see the semiconductor. They are now
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
making it as a semiconductor base.
Mhm, mhm,
So it is to a great extent dependent upon the
mhm,
leadership. You actually identified the right issue.
mhm,
All other things actually roll up to the leadership. And I interacted very closely during that period with the top bureaucracy in RICO, RFC, and even in the secretariat. It was very
mhm.
difficult. It was
You
not
there
a
is
good experience at all.
of course, and that's the, so many thousands, maybe lakhs of job have been lost, and area development has
Absolutely
gone, simply because the political leadership and the bureaucratic leadership, they never did what was expected of them. They don't have that focus. Rather,
correct.
the politician with the old style politician, the problem is their aversion to business and industry, and more faith in so many hollow slogans.
Correct.
So